The credit card statement lay open on my kitchen table like a wound that refused to heal. $17,000. Wedding flowers, catering deposits, venue fees, all charged to the card I had foolishly added Zoe to 3 years ago for emergencies. My daughter's wedding, funded by my teacher's pension and the modest inheritance from Donald's life insurance. I traced each item with my finger, every charge a tiny betrayal. Enchanted Gardens florist, $3,200. Bella Vista reception hall, $8,500. Morrison's catering, $4,800. The numbers began to blur as tears welled up in my eyes, tears I stubbornly refused to let fall. At 62, I should have known better. I should have learned that my children's love often came with a price tag. The house felt vast around me, filled only with echoes of a family that had slowly and methodically erased me from their lives. Donald's reading chair still sat by the window. Though he'd been gone for 4 years, I had left everything exactly as it was on the day he died, partly out of grief, partly out of a desperate hope that preserving the familiar might somehow keep me connected to a time when I mattered to someone. My phone buzzed against the granite countertop, on the kitchen island Donald had surprised me with for our 20th anniversary. A message from Zoe. "Hey, Mom. Can you pick up some groceries for us? Running late from wedding stuff. Just the usual. Thanks." The usual. As if I were some kind of hired help. As if the $17,000 I had unknowingly poured into her dream wedding meant absolutely nothing. As if I meant nothing. I set the phone face down and turned back to the statement, mentally running the numbers. My monthly pension was $2,800. After the mortgage, utilities, and basic necessities, I had maybe $400 left each month. At this rate, paying off Zoe's wedding would take me. The front door slammed. Then came the unmistakable thud of my son Jerry's heavy steps. He'd moved back in 6 months ago after his divorce, claiming he needed time to get back on his feet. At 34, Jerry had mastered the art of turning temporary solutions into permanent impositions. "Mom, I need to borrow your car tonight," he called from the hallway, not bothering to enter the kitchen. "Rebecca and I are going to check out that apartment in Riverside." Rebecca, the 26-year-old yoga instructor he'd been dating for 3 months, used my home like it was her private retreat. She did her meditation in my living room, leaving behind crystals and burning sage that triggered my allergies. When I gently brought it up, Jerry accused me of being unwelcoming and stuck in the past. "Jerry," I called back, my voice level despite the anger swelling inside me, "can you come here for a moment?" He appeared in the doorway, already annoyed. His dark hair was a mess, and he wore the designer jeans I'd given him for Christmas, back when I still believed gifts could bridge the widening gap between us. "What's up?" "I'm kind of in a rush." I pointed to the credit card statement. "Did you know about this?" Jerry's eyes darted toward the paper, then away, a tell I'd learned to read when he was 10 and sneaking cookies. "Know about what?" "Your sister charged $17,000 to my credit card, for her wedding." A pause, then a shrug that chilled me to the bone. "Yeah, she mentioned something." "Look, Mom, it's just money. You can afford it. And Zoe's been so stressed about the wedding." "Just money." The words escaped sharper than I intended. "Jerry, that's my entire emergency fund." It's a loan," he interrupted, examining his fingernails. "She'll pay you back eventually. Besides, you've got the house, the pension. You're fine." I stared at him, the boy I had raised, whose scraped knees I had bandaged, whose dreams I'd nurtured through 2 failed businesses and a marriage that ended because he couldn't hold a job more than 8 months. And now here he stood, in my kitchen, in my home where he paid no rent, dismissing my financial security like it was meaningless. "Where's Zoe's engagement dinner?" I asked suddenly. Jerry froze. "What?" "The engagement dinner. I haven't been invited." "When is it?" Another pause, this one longer. "Oh, that. Yeah, I think they already had it. Like a small thing. You know how Zoe is, likes to keep things intimate." The lie hung heavy in the air between us. I could feel it sink into my bones, adding to the weight of countless other exclusions, dismissals, and casual cruelties. Birthday dinners. Grandchildren's recitals I heard about through Facebook posts. Family photos I wasn't in because, "You never like how you look in pictures, Mom." "I see." I folded the credit card statement neatly. Deliberately. "And the wedding? Will I be invited to that?" "Of course you're invited, Mom. Don't be dramatic." Dramatic. As if wanting to be included in my daughter's life was some kind of performance. "The keys are on the hook," I said softly. "Try to have the car back by midnight." Jerry grabbed them and paused at the doorway. For a moment, I thought he might say something, apologize, acknowledge the pain in my voice. Instead, he said, "Oh, and Rebecca's staying over tonight. We'll try to keep it down." The door slammed again, leaving me alone with the credit card statement and the dawning realization that somehow, somewhere, I had become a stranger in my own life. I walked over to Donald's chair and sank into it with a weight that felt heavier than my body. Outside, the world continued like nothing was wrong. Across the street, Mrs. Duncan was watering her garden. The Morrison kids were riding bikes in their driveway. Normal families, doing normal things. And here I was, surrounded by the ruins of relationships I had spent decades tending to, only to find they'd been built on my usefulness, not my worth. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Zoe. "Forgot to mention. Can you handle the catering deposit for next month? It's only like $2,000. Dad's life insurance should cover it, right? You're the best. Only $2,000. Dad's life insurance should cover it." Donald's life insurance, which had already been chipped away by his medical bills, by Jerry's latest failed business, and now by Zoe's dream wedding. That life insurance had been meant to protect my future, to ensure I could age with dignity, to prepare for the medical care I'd eventually need. I stared at the message until the letters swam in front of me. And then I did something I had never done in all my 34 years as a mother. I deleted the message without replying. But silence alone wouldn't be enough anymore. I understood that now, sitting in Donald's chair, watching the last rays of evening filter through the windows he once loved to sit beside. Silence had become another way of saying yes to people who had forgotten how to hear no. In the gathering darkness of my living room, surrounded by the pieces of a life once defined by love and sacrifice, I began to think, truly think, about what needed to happen next. If my children had decided I was valuable only as long as I provided, maybe it was time they learned what happened when that value was taken away. I folded the credit card statement one last time, its crinkles sharp in the quiet. Tomorrow, I would make calls. Tonight, I would sit with the memory of Donald and remember how it felt to be loved not for what I gave, but for who I was. The house sighed around me with its familiar creaks and silence. But for the first time in what felt like ages, that silence didn't feel like abandonment, it felt like possibility. The sunlight streaming through my bedroom window the next morning carried a different clarity, sharp, determined. I'd slept more soundly than I had in months, as if some mechanism inside me had finally snapped into gear. By 7 a.m., I was dressed, prepared, and ready to begin what I now thought of as my reckoning. The first call was to the credit card company. "I need to report unauthorized charges," I told the woman on the line, my voice calm and firm. "My daughter's been using my card without permission for several months." She was polite, even kind. Yes, they could freeze the card. Yes, they could dispute the charges. Yes, they'd begin an investigation. I listed each transaction, each amount, the full $17,000 in unauthorized wedding expenses. "Ma'am," she said gently, "if these are found to be fraudulent, it could result in criminal charges against the cardholder." "I understand," I replied, and I meant it. My second call was to my bank. "I need to remove someone from my account," I said. "My son Jerry. He's had access for 2 years, but I'm revoking it today." The banker was quick and to the point. In under 10 minutes, Jerry's access was removed. His debit card would stop working by lunchtime. My third call was to my lawyer, Janet Morrison. No relation to the neighborhood Morrisons, but a sharp, dependable woman who had once handled Donald's estate. "Sandy," she said warmly, "it's been a while. What can I do for you?" "I need to revise my will," I told her. "And I need to explore options about some unauthorized credit card activity." We scheduled a meeting for that afternoon. By 9 a.m., I sat in my car outside Riverside Elementary, the school where I'd spent 32 years teaching 3rd grade. The lot was full of drop-offs, lunchboxes, backpacks. Parents hurried their children along in the same dance I'd watched for decades. My phone rang. "Zoe." I let it go to voicemail. Then it rang again. And again. On the 4th ring, I picked up. "Mom, thank God," she said, clearly panicked. "Something's wrong with your credit card. The florist called saying the payment for the centerpieces was declined." I tried calling them back, but "the card has been frozen," I said, evenly. "What? Why?" "The wedding is in 6 weeks. We still have vendors to pay. The venue's final payment is due Friday." "I know the schedule, Zoe." There was a pause. Then her tone shifted, softening into that pleading whine she had perfected as a teenager. "Mom, come on. Whatever this is, we can fix it. Just call them and let them know it's okay. These are real charges. It's legit." "Is it?" I asked. "Because I don't remember authorizing $17,000 in wedding bills. You said I could use it for emergencies. These deposits were emergencies. If we didn't pay, we'd lose everything. Your wedding is not my emergency, Zoe." The silence that followed stretched long and deep. I could hear her breathing on the other end, calculating, trying to come up with just the right mix of guilt and persuasion to make me cave, like I always had. "Mom, you're being unreasonable. This is my wedding, your only daughter's wedding. Don't you want me to be happy?" That question had controlled me for 34 years. Don't you want me to be happy? Don't you want us to succeed? Don't you love us enough to help? I want you to pay for your own wedding, I said, like adults do. We can't afford, then perhaps you should plan a wedding you can afford. I ended the call. The phone rang again immediately. I turned it off. By 11 a.m., I was at the hardware store, buying new locks for my front and back doors. The elderly clerk, someone I'd seen for years, helped me load the boxes into my car. Changing locks is easier than most folks think, he said cheerfully. YouTube's got videos for everything these days. I thanked him and drove home, only to find Jerry's car in the driveway and Rebecca's yoga mat stretched across my living room floor. The smell of burning sage hung heavy in the air, stinging my eyes. In the kitchen, Rebecca was making a smoothie with my groceries while Jerry scrolled through his phone at my table. "Mom," finally, Jerry said without looking up. "Something's wrong with my debit card. And Zoe's been calling you all morning. She's freaking out about some wedding payment thing. The card was declined because I closed your access to my accounts," I said, placing my purse on the counter. "And yes, I'm aware of Zoe's situation." Rebecca looked up from the blender, her perfectly styled hair catching the sunlight. "Oh my God, Sandy, you scared us. Jerry thought maybe you'd had a stroke or something, making such weird financial decisions." Weird financial decisions. A 26-year-old guest in my house, contributing nothing, had opinions about my money. "Rebecca," I said, calmly, "I need you to gather your things and leave." She laughed, incredulous. "What? Why?" "Because this is my home, and you don't live here." Jerry finally looked up. "Mom, what's gotten into you? You're acting crazy." "I'm acting like someone who owns her own home and controls her finances." I walked to the coffee maker and began preparing a cup, moving with slow purpose. "Rebecca, you have 10 minutes to collect your things." "Jerry." Rebecca turned to Jerry, waiting for him to defend her. He stood, his jaw tight with the stubbornness I recognized from his teenage years. "Mom, stop. You're embarrassing yourself. Rebecca's my girlfriend, and she's welcome here." "Not anymore. This is ridiculous." "Over what?" "Some credit card mix-up. Zoe will pay you back. She always does." I turned and looked my son in the eye. "When has Zoe ever paid me back, Jerry? The car insurance I covered in college? The deposit for her first apartment? The loan for grad school that was temporary? That's different. That's what parents do." "No," I said. "That's what I did." Past tense. Rebecca had gone still. The smoothie forgotten. "Maybe I should go," she said softly. "Yes," I replied. "You should." Jerry's face flushed deep red. "If Rebecca leaves, I leave too." The ultimatum settled in the room. For 34 years, that threat would have devastated me. The idea that my children might withdraw their love, their presence, had always kept me compliant. I sipped my coffee. It was perfect. "That's your choice," I said. "But if you leave, you don't come back when it's convenient." "You don't mean that." But I did. And something in my face must have shown it, because Jerry's confidence wavered. "Mom, let's talk about this. You're upset over the money, I get it. But are you really going to throw away your family over some credit card charges?" "I'm not throwing away my family, Jerry. I'm choosing to stop being an ATM with a kitchen." Rebecca gathered her yoga mat and crystals faster than I'd thought possible. "I'll wait in the car," she murmured and quickly disappeared. Jerry and I stood facing each other across the kitchen island, the same space where I had made his lunches, helped with his homework, listened to his dreams, comforted him through his divorce, and celebrated his tiny wins. "This isn't you, Mom," he said softly, trying a gentler tone. "You're not cruel. You don't cut people off. You're the glue of the family." I said. "But keeping a family together takes more than one person." My phone buzzed again. I had turned it back on. Zoe. I looked at the screen and let it go to voicemail without a second thought. "Zoe's probably crying," Jerry said. "She thinks her wedding is ruined." "It's not ruined," I said. "She just needs to figure out how to pay for it herself." "With what money?" "She's a teacher, Mom. She makes nothing." "I was a teacher too, Jerry. For 32 years. I managed to pay for my own wedding." "That was different," Jerry argued. "Things cost less then." "Things cost less because people planned according to what they could afford," I replied. Jerry went silent, studying my face like he was seeing me, truly seeing me, for the first time in years. "What do you want from us?" he asked at last. It was a fair question. What did I want from them? An apology? Acknowledgement of how they'd taken advantage of my love? A sincere promise to change? "I want you to be adults," I said plainly. "I want you to take responsibility for your own lives and your own choices. I want you to stop treating me like some resource to be mined whenever it suits you. And if we don't? Then you'll find out what life looks like without my financial support." Jerry grabbed his jacket from the chair and shoved his arms into the sleeves. "Fine. You want to play hardball? Let's play hardball. But don't expect us to come crawling back when you're lonely and realize you've pushed away the only people who love you. The only people who love you." The cruelty of it took the breath right out of me. "Goodbye, Jerry," I said quietly. He slammed the front door so hard the windows shook. I finished my coffee in the thick silence that followed, then walked outside to retrieve the new locks from the car. I had work to do. By 3 p.m., the locks were installed, tested twice for good measure. The firm click of the bolts sliding into place felt final, like one chapter closing and another beginning. I kept one key for myself and stored the other safely in my jewelry box beside Donald's wedding ring. At 4 o'clock sharp, I walked into Janet Morrison's office downtown. It still smelled like leather and old books, the same warm scent I remembered from the days she'd helped us through Donald's final months. Janet looked just as I remembered her, silver hair pulled into a sleek bun, glasses perched low on her nose, and those shrewd eyes that saw everything. "Sandy," she said, gesturing to the leather chair across from her desk. "You sounded upset on the phone. What's going on?" I told her everything, step by step. The unauthorized credit card charges, the growing pattern of financial manipulation, the disregard for my boundaries, the way I'd been excluded from family events. Janet listened carefully, jotting down notes, pausing only to ask the occasional question. Her expression grew more grave as the story unfolded. "How long has this been happening?" she asked once I finished. "Years," I said softly. "But it's gotten worse since Donald passed. I think they see me more as a resource than a person." Janet set her pen down and leaned back in her chair. Sandy, what you're describing may qualify as financial elder abuse. Those credit card charges alone, I'm not looking to press criminal charges, I interrupted quickly. I just want them to finally understand that their actions have consequences. Understood. Let's start with your will, then we can go over your other options, Janet said. My existing will, written shortly after Donald passed, left everything split equally between Jerry and Zoe: the house, my retirement savings, Donald's life insurance policy, with Jerry named as the executor. I want to change all of it, I told her. I want the house and half of my assets to go to charity. The children can split what remains of my retirement accounts, but only if they repay what they've taken from me over the years. Janet jotted it all down. Which charities? The Literacy Foundation I used to volunteer at, the local animal shelter, maybe something that helps elderly people without family support. The irony of that last one was not lost on me. Do you want to change the executor as well? Yes, to you, if you're willing. Janet gave a small nod. I am. She moved on. About the credit card charges, the bank should be able to recover most of the funds. But Sandy, I have to ask, are you ready for the backlash? Your children aren't going to accept this quietly. As if on cue, my phone lit up. Zoe again. I declined the call. They've been calling all day, I said. Jerry's already left, took Rebecca with him. He thinks I'll cave once the loneliness sets in. Janet looked at me. Will you? The question hung there, not just between us but inside me. Would I? It would be easy to go back, to call, to apologize, to slide back into being the mother who never said no, who fixed every mistake, who absorbed every burden. But I had found something in the silence. No, I said. And I meant it. I won't. Janet gave a small, approving smile. Good. There's one more thing. Have you considered a restraining order? If they start harassing you, let's wait, I said. Let's see how they handle boundaries first. By the time I left her office, it was nearly 6 o'clock. The revised will would be ready by the end of the week. The credit card case had been opened. The locks had been changed. I was rewriting the story of my life, and the feeling was both terrifying and liberating. On the way home, I stopped at the grocery store, buying only what I needed for me: a small chicken breast, some fresh vegetables, and a bottle of wine I'd been saving for a special occasion. As I waited in the checkout line, it struck me, this was a special occasion. It was the first day I had chosen to matter to myself as much as I'd always tried to matter to others. When I got home, the house felt transformed. It was quieter, yes, but also cleaner, lighter, freer. Rebecca's crystals were gone. Jerry's clutter, magazines, dishes, tangled charging cords, had disappeared. The air smelled like peace, not sage or entitlement. I was halfway through preparing dinner when I heard a soft knock at the back door. Through the window, I recognized my neighbor from 2 houses down. A woman about my age stood there, someone I'd seen from a distance, waved at now and then, but never really spoken to. She held a casserole dish in her hands. I opened the door cautiously. "Hi," she said with a tentative smile. "I'm Elizabeth Duncan. I live in the blue house with the garden. I hope I'm not intruding, but I heard some shouting earlier, and I saw a young man leaving with suitcases." She hesitated, looking a little embarrassed. "I just wanted to check if you were okay." Elizabeth Duncan. Mrs. Duncan. I'd watched her out there for years, tending her roses and neat vegetable beds, but we'd never said much more than comments about the weather. "I'm fine," I said automatically, then paused. "Actually, that's not completely true. It's been a difficult day, but I'm managing." "Would you like some company while you manage?" she asked gently, lifting the casserole slightly. "I made too much lasagna, and eating alone gets old." There was something in her eyes, a kind of understanding, one woman who's been alone speaking to another who finally understands what it feels like. "I was just opening a bottle of wine," I heard myself say. "I'll get the glasses," she replied, as if our evening had already been decided. 40 minutes later, we were seated at my kitchen table, enjoying her warm, perfectly baked lasagna and my carefully saved bottle of Pinot Grigio. Elizabeth was a widow, too. Her husband had passed away 3 years ago from the same cancer that took Donald. She had 2 grown children who lived across the country, both successful, both busy, their lives filled with careers and commitments. "They call every Sunday," she told me when I asked. "Lovely calls. How are you, Mom? Are you eating enough? Taking your meds?" She smiled, then shrugged. "They mean well. But sometimes, it feels like they're checking off a box. Visit elderly mother, done." "At least they call," I replied, and immediately regretted the bitterness in my voice. It felt like a betrayal to even think it. "Your children don't call?" she asked gently. And there in my kitchen, with someone who had once been a stranger, I told her everything. The money. The exclusion. The dismissive comments. The engagement dinner I hadn't been invited to. The thousands of dollars charged to my credit card. And how, finally, I had come to see how deeply I'd allowed them to take until I had almost nothing left but the realization of how thoroughly they'd used me. Elizabeth listened without judgment, occasionally nodding or making small sympathetic sounds as I spoke. When I finished, she sat quietly for a moment before asking, "How do you feel now?" "Terrified," I admitted. "And relieved." "And guilty for feeling relieved." "The guilt will fade," Elizabeth said with calm assurance. "The relief will grow stronger." "How do you know?" I asked. She smiled, and for the first time, I noticed the laugh lines around her eyes and the small scar on her chin that gave her face character instead of flaw. "Because I went through something similar with my sister. It wasn't about money, it was emotional manipulation. Years of being the one who always gave in, always made room, always sacrificed my own peace just to keep things nice. Finally, I stopped. Cut off contact entirely." "Do you regret it?" I asked. "I regret how long it took me to do it," she said. My phone buzzed with a new message. "Zoe. Mom, please call me back. I'm scared and I don't know what to do about the wedding. I'm sorry if I upset you, but please don't punish me for using the card when you said it was for emergencies." I handed the phone to Elizabeth, who read the message carefully, her expression thoughtful. "Still playing the victim," she said quietly. "Notice how she says she's sorry if she upset you, not sorry for charging $17,000 without asking. And now she's turning consequences into punishment." I hadn't noticed the phrasing before, but she was right. Even in her apology, Zoe was rewriting the narrative to make herself the one who had been wronged. "What would you do?" I asked. "What feels right to you?" Elizabeth responded. I looked at the message again. That familiar pull of motherly guilt stirred in my chest. Zoe was scared. Zoe needed support. Zoe was apologizing, or at least pretending to. But beneath the guilt was something clearer, stronger. A recognition of the old pattern. The crisis. The emotional appeal. The subtle shifting of blame. The unspoken belief that love means abandoning reason. I deleted the message without replying. Good, Elizabeth said simply. We continued talking until nearly 10 o'clock, our conversation drifting into books, gardening, and the peculiar, persistent ache of widowhood. We talked about children who treated their parents like ATMs, and how hard it was to keep loving people who never really saw you. About the bravery it takes to choose your own peace over the expectations others place on you. When Elizabeth finally left, promising to bring back the lasagna dish the next day, I felt something stir inside me, something I hadn't felt in years, the beginning of a friendship that wasn't built on what I could give, but on who I was. I was washing our wine glasses when my phone rang again. Jerry. Mom, he began, and his voice was different, less sure of itself, softer somehow. Look, maybe we got off on the wrong foot today. Rebecca and I are staying at her place tonight, but I wanted to call and, I don't know, talk. I'm listening, I said. The whole debit card thing really threw us off. I had to pay for dinner with quarters I found under the seat in the car. He waited, expecting me to jump in, to rescue. I didn't. Zoe's been crying all day. The venue called. If they don't get the final payment by Friday, they're canceling. She's freaking out. That sounds stressful, I said calmly. There was another long pause. Mom, I don't get it. You're acting like someone I don't even know. Maybe you never really knew me, I replied. Silence again. Then, so what happens now? We just stop talking. You can call anytime you want, Jerry. But the conversation will be different now. Different how? I won't be giving you money. I won't be fixing your mistakes. And I won't pretend that being used is the same thing as being loved. Jesus, Mom, he snapped, you make it sound like we're criminals. Aren't you? I asked quietly. The question settled heavily between us. I could hear him breathing on the other end, the hesitation, the grasping for some magical phrase that might return things to the way they'd been without acknowledging anything had ever been wrong. I need to think about this, he said at last. Take all the time you need, I told him, and I meant it. After he hung up, I remained at the kitchen table, surrounded by the quiet remains of an evening that had surprised me. 2 wine glasses, the fading scent of Elizabeth's lasagna, and a lingering sense that maybe, just maybe, there was a life waiting for me outside the roles I'd always accepted. Tomorrow would bring new resistance. Zoe would push harder. Jerry would test different angles. They'd bring in extended family, friends, anyone they thought could pressure me back into the version of myself that served their needs. But tonight, for the first time in what felt like forever, I went to bed feeling like I was exactly where I belonged. The siege began Thursday morning. I woke up to find Zoe's car in the driveway and my daughter curled up on the porch, still wearing yesterday's clothes. Her mascara had run, her eyes were puffy, and even through the window I could see she'd been crying for hours. I brewed coffee, made some toast, took my time getting dressed, and finally opened the door at 8:30. Mom, Zoe rasped, her voice cracked and raw. I've been here since 5. We need to talk. Good morning, Zoe. You look awful, I said with calm detachment. She pushed herself upright, swaying like she might collapse. I didn't sleep. I haven't eaten. The wedding is ruined, and I don't understand why you're doing this to me. I'm not doing anything to you, I replied. I'm just no longer doing things for you. Her face twisted as fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. The venue canceled. They called yesterday afternoon. They needed the final payment and couldn't process it. She broke down, sobbing. 2 years of planning, Mom. 2 years. And now it's gone. I studied her carefully, really studied her, maybe for the first time in a long time. At 31, Zoe could still make herself look like a heartbroken child whenever she needed something. Her fiancé, David, from what little I knew, a kind and stable man, likely had no idea how practiced she was in the art of emotional manipulation. What does David think about all this? I asked. She looked up sharply. David doesn't know. I didn't tell him about the money. He thinks everything's been paid. So you've hidden the debt from him? I'm going to fix it. Just, please. Just this once, help me fix this. Just this once. Just this once. The same phrase that had preceded nearly every financial ask in the last 10 years. Zoe, sit down, I said, taking one of the wooden porch chairs Donald had built long ago. We're going to have a conversation, but it's not the one you're expecting. She sat stiffly, perching at the edge of the chair like a bird poised for flight. If this is about paying you back, I will. I promise. After the honeymoon, after David and I, when did you decide I wasn't worth including in your engagement dinner? I asked. Her eyes widened. What? Your engagement dinner, Zoe. When did you and David decide that your father's death meant I was no longer family? Her mouth opened, then closed, then opened again, wordless, stunned like a fish pulled suddenly from water. It wasn't like that, Zoe stammered. It was just immediate family. David's parents, his sister. I am your immediate family, Zoe. I'm your mother. I know that. But, when did you decide using my credit card without permission was acceptable? You said I could use it for emergencies. A wedding is not an emergency. A wedding is a choice. And even if it were, $17,000 requires a conversation. Zoe's composure began to unravel. Fine. I should have asked first. I'm sorry. But the damage is done, and we can fix it if you'll just, no, the word landed like a solid wall between us. Zoe stared, as if she couldn't quite comprehend. What do you mean? I mean no. I'm done fixing your problems. I'm done funding your choices. I'm done being treated like an ATM with a kitchen. You're my mother, she cried. Yes, I said softly. I am. And for 31 years, I've shown you what unconditional love looks like. I've sacrificed, supported, and enabled you through every poor decision. And in return, you've learned to see me not as a person, but as a resource. Zoe began to cry again, but this time the tears were angry. So that's it? You're just going to abandon me? Let my wedding fall apart because you're having some kind of midlife crisis? I'm 62, Zoe. If this is a crisis, it's a late life awakening. My phone buzzed, a text from Elizabeth. Coffee later if you need reinforcements. The kindness of it, the sheer simplicity of someone checking in without asking for anything, gave me strength. "I need you to leave now," I said. "You're welcome to come back when you're ready to have an adult conversation about how we move forward." Zoe's voice rose. "You want an adult conversation? Fine. Here's adult. You're a lonely old widow pushing away the only people who care about you. You'll die alone, and it'll be your fault." The cruelty knocked the air out of me. She was using my grief, Donald's death, as a weapon to force me back into submission. "Goodbye, Zoe," I said, rising and walking to the door. "Mom, wait," there was real panic now. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean it. I'm just scared. I'm upset." I closed the door and locked the deadbolt. She pounded on it for several minutes, switching between begging and threats, before finally storming off. I watched from the window as she sat in her car for 20 more minutes, likely calling Jerry, David, anyone who might convince me to change my mind. Around noon, reinforcements arrived. First came Jennifer, Jerry's ex-wife, someone I'd always liked, despite the divorce. She stood awkwardly on my porch, hands clasped, and said, "Hi, Sandy. Jerry asked me to come talk to you." "How are the kids, Jennifer?" I asked. "They're good. Growing fast." She shifted uneasily. "I don't want to be in the middle, but Jerry said this is some kind of family emergency." "There's no emergency," I said. "There's a consequence." I invited her in, made coffee, and told her the truth, about the money, the exclusions, the years of quiet exploitation. Jennifer listened, uncomfortable. "I had no idea. Jerry always made it sound like you were happy to help." "I was," I said. Past tense. "He's really struggling, Sandy. The divorce, his job." She stopped, hearing her own words. "Jennifer, you supported yourself and your children on a teacher's salary. Jerry's struggling because no one ever made him take responsibility." She left soon after, clearly regretting being dragged into the middle. At 2 p.m., David arrived. Zoe's fiancé. A quiet, respectful man. I opened the door and saw genuine distress on his face. "Mrs. Patterson," he said, "I hope it's okay I came. Zoe told me about the wedding situation. I wanted to apologize. That I didn't expect." "Apologize for what, David?" "I had no idea she charged so much to your card without asking. She said you offered to help, and I assumed it was your gift to us. If I'd known it wasn't approved, I never would have let her do that." For the first time in days, I felt a flicker of hope. "Come in," I said. He explained how Zoe had managed all the wedding finances, insisting everything was covered. He'd offered to contribute more, but she declined. He hadn't known about the credit card charges, or the pattern of dependence. "I love her," he said. "But I'm starting to see some things that worry me. Like the way she talks about you, like you're obligated to solve everything. When I suggested a smaller wedding or paying ourselves, she made me feel like I was being unreasonable." He paused. "Is that why you weren't at the engagement dinner?" My chest tightened. "You noticed?" "I asked her," he said. "She claimed you were busy. That you didn't want to come. But it didn't feel right." I told him the truth. About being excluded. About how I found out through Jerry. About all the other times I'd been erased. David looked pained. Mrs. Patterson, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I would have insisted you be there. Then he asked, what will you do now? I don't know, David admitted. Zoe's talking about eloping to Vegas and using our savings. But honestly, I'm starting to question if this is even the right time for us to get married. If we can't talk honestly about money and family, he shrugged helplessly. After he left, I called Elizabeth. She showed up within the hour, a bottle of wine in one hand and a bag of Chinese takeout in the other. Rough day? She asked, taking one look at me. Educational day, I said. I'm learning who my children really are when they can't get what they want from me. We were halfway through dinner when my phone rang. Jerry. Mom, this has gone far enough, he snapped the moment I answered. Zoe's a mess. Her fiancé is asking questions. You're tearing this family apart over money. I'm not tearing anything apart, I replied calmly. I'm simply refusing to fund it. We talked to Jennifer. We talked to David. You're turning everyone against us. I told them the truth. If that turns them against you, then maybe the issue isn't the truth, it's what it reveals. Fine. You want to play hardball? We'll play hardball. We're thinking of having you declared incompetent. The threat was so ridiculous I actually laughed. On what grounds? You've changed suddenly. You're making irrational financial decisions. You're not thinking straight. Elizabeth, who could hear Jerry's voice through the phone, rolled her eyes and mouthed, amateur. Jerry, I said, calm as ever, I've revised my will. I've consulted a lawyer. I've made clear, rational choices to protect my assets from misuse. If you want to challenge my competency, go ahead. But Janet Morrison has thorough documentation of my decision-making. The silence on the line was almost satisfying. This isn't over, Jerry said finally. No, I replied. It's just beginning. After I hung up, Elizabeth topped off our wine. How are you feeling? Like I'm standing on the edge of a cliff, I confessed. Terrified. But also free. The terrified part fades, she promised. The freedom only grows. How long did it take with your sister? 6 months for the guilt to loosen its grip. A year before I stopped flinching every time the phone rang. She paused. But Sandy, are you prepared for the possibility that they might not come around? That this could be permanent? It was the question I'd been avoiding. Was I willing to lose my children forever just to reclaim myself? I thought of Zoe's weaponized cruelty. Jerry's threats. The years of being erased, drained, ignored. Then I thought of Elizabeth's friendship, David's remorse, the peace I'd found in my own home for the first time in decades. Yes, I said. I think I am. Outside, the sky blushed pink and gold. Tomorrow would bring new attempts at guilt and manipulation. But tonight, I was a woman who mattered to herself as much as she'd ever mattered to anyone else. And that, I was learning, was enough. 3 weeks later, I was in my garden when David pulled into the driveway. The last 21 days had been the quietest of my adult life. No emergency calls. No one banging on my door. No one treating my home like a free hotel or my wallet like a public fund. Elizabeth and I had slipped into an easy rhythm of morning coffee and evening walks. I had started living for myself again. The credit card company ruled in my favor, $17,000 reversed, marked as possible fraud. Zoe would face no charges, but she wouldn't see a cent of wedding funding. David looked thinner as he approached, more serious. He held an envelope. "Mrs. Patterson," he said when I answered. "Do you have a minute?" "Of course." "Iced tea?" We sat on the back patio, near Donald's roses, blooming again after years of neglect. Gardening had become a quiet ritual, a reminder that things grow when you nurture them, not just pay for them. "The wedding's off," David said plainly. I set my glass down. "I'm sorry to hear that." "Are you?" he asked, not with anger, but with clarity. I considered. "I'm sorry you're hurting. I'm sorry Zoe couldn't be the person you believed she was. But no, I'm not sorry you saw the truth before a legal commitment." He nodded. "That's what I thought you'd say." "You're right." He handed me an envelope. Inside was a cashier's check, $8,500. Half the reverse charges. "David, I can't accept this." "Yes, you can. I benefited from that money, even if I didn't know where it came from. The catering, the venue, that was for my wedding, too." I looked at the check, then at this young man taking responsibility for something that wasn't even his fault. "What did Zoe say when you told her?" David gave a bitter laugh. "She doesn't know I'm here. We haven't spoken since I ended it 2 weeks ago." "Why?" I asked. I asked her to talk openly about money, family, everything. I suggested we postpone the wedding, get counseling. He paused. "She told me I was being manipulated by a bitter old woman who couldn't stand to see her daughter happy." The sting of Zoe's words was still there, but time and truth had dulled it. "And you said?" David asked. "I said that if she couldn't see how she'd been treating you, then maybe we weren't ready to get married." He stared out at the garden. "She packed that night. Moved in with her old college roommate. And how do you feel about that?" I asked. "Relieved," he admitted. "Which probably tells me everything I need to know." We sat quietly for a while, watching Elizabeth's cat crouch in the neighbor's bushes. "Can I ask you something, Mrs. Patterson?" "Sandy," I said. "Yes." "How did you know? How did you decide to stop enabling her?" I thought of the credit card statement, of Donald's chair by the window, of the 1,000 quiet dismissals that had finally reached a breaking point. I realized I was grieving someone who was still alive, I said. Mourning the daughter I thought I had, while ignoring the woman she'd become. David nodded. I think I was doing something similar. After he left, I sat on the patio with the check in my hands. It was more than repayment. It was respect, accountability, everything my own children hadn't given. My phone buzzed. "Elizabeth. How did it go with David? How did you know he was here?" I asked. I may have been watering near the fence. Coincidentally. I laughed. It went well. He's a good man. And Zoe is about to find out what life looks like without a net. That evening, I was reading on the porch when a car I didn't recognize pulled up. Zoe stepped out, followed by a woman about her age, Melissa, I assumed. Zoe looked different. No makeup. Wrinkled clothes. Desperation replacing polish. "Mom," she said at the steps. "We need to talk." "Good evening, Zoe." "Hello, Melissa." This is Melissa, Zoe said quickly. Look, I know you're mad, but this has gone too far. David's gone. The wedding's cancelled. I'm basically homeless. You're staying with Melissa. On her couch. In a studio. You need to leave now, I said. This isn't your home anymore. You made that clear when you left me out of your engagement dinner. Melissa shifted awkwardly. Maybe I should wait in the car. Maybe you should, I agreed. Melissa left. Zoe stood under the porch light Donald had installed decades ago. Mom, please. I know I made mistakes. Mistakes? I said. You stole from me. Lied to your fiancé. Cut me out of your life and still expected funding. Called me bitter for finally setting boundaries. I was upset. No, you were honest. For the first time in years, you said exactly what you thought of me. Zoe cried, but the tears felt different. Or maybe I'd just stopped being moved by them. I don't have anywhere else to go. You're 31. You have a master's degree and a stable job. Figure it out. You're really going to let me be homeless? You're not homeless. You have options. You just don't like them. What do you want from me? An apology? Fine. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I used your card. I'm sorry I didn't invite you. I'm sorry about the dying alone thing. The words were transactional. A trade. Sorry as currency. What are you sorry for, Zoe? I just told you. No, you told me what you did. I'm asking what you're sorry for. She blinked, confused. I don't know what you want me to say. I want you to understand the difference between regretting consequences and regretting choices. Between being sorry you got caught, and sorry you caused harm. You're playing word games. I'm trying to speak with my daughter. But I'm beginning to realize that person might not exist anymore. The truth settled between us like dust. Zoe looked like she might argue, then didn't. Some part of her, buried under years of entitlement, seemed to hear what I meant. So what now? She asked. We just don't have a relationship. We can, I said. But it'll be different. It'll be built on respect, not dependence. You'll treat me like a person, not a resource. And if I can't? Then you've answered your own question. She stood there a moment longer, lost, then turned and walked back to the car. I watched them drive away and felt something surprising, peace. The next morning, Jerry called. Zoe told me what happened last night. Mom, this is insane. She's your daughter. She's an adult who made adult choices. I'm allowing her to face adult consequences. You're tearing this family apart. No, Jerry. I'm choosing not to be torn apart anymore. A long pause. So that's it? You're just done with us? I'm done being used. That's different. What if we change? What if we pay you back, treat you better? It was the first time either of them had acknowledged the need to change. Then we'll see, I said. But change has to be real, not just a way to get access to my resources again. How do we prove it's real? You don't prove it to me. You prove it to yourselves, by becoming people who don't need to prove it. After we hung up, I sat in Donald's chair and looked out over the life I'd rebuilt. My garden was blooming. My friendship with Elizabeth had become something deep and sustaining. I'd returned to volunteering at the literacy center, helping people who appreciated, not expected, my time. David's check was safely in an account only I could access. But what mattered more was what it represented, not money, but dignity. My phone buzzed. Elizabeth. Coffee date with that new widow from Riverside Elementary. I think you'll like her. I smiled and replied, yes. Looking forward to it. And I meant it. For the first time in decades, I was looking forward. To conversations free from crisis. To friendships built on choice, not obligation. To a future where I mattered to me. Outside, Mrs. Duncan's roses were blooming again. Mine were finally catching up. I had work to do in the garden. People to meet. Books to read. A life to live, on my own terms. The siege was over. I had won, not by defeating my children, but by refusing to be defeated for their convenience. In the end, the greatest victory was the simplest one, remembering I was worth more than what I gave, and finding the courage to finally live that truth. The afternoon sun streamed through Donald's favorite window. And for the first time since he died, that light didn't feel like an ending. It felt like a beginning.